Hey, what's up folks, and welcome to a week 1 recap. I'm going to cover some updates I made to the build, a vast improvement on the Xophgraft+Arkhon tech I've been using this week that removes all the jank, and I want to discuss the Refraction Runegraft, which is pretty sick, and a few other miscellaneous questions I've answered a bunch on Twitch or in Discord, or maybe others have answered in Discord. I'm going to jump right in with the Xophgraft tech. Now on day 2 I was using this to get massive amounts of fizz gained as extra. However, there's a lot of jank involved, right? Like I'm toggling purity elements on and off in order to acquire it through my Archon's tools. What we've done now, and actually we did it a little bit later that night, was to acquire a Xophgraft with ailment avoidance. Now once we have this mod, we get 100% combined with the Ancestral Vision Jewel, 15% rolled on our boots, and you want to min roll, and I'll get to why in just a second, and a combined 100% if you include the Xophgraft. Now if we take a look at the skill, the Grey Wind House, what you'll see is it has an 8-second cooldown and it has an 8-second duration, which means we can get perfect uptime provided we're able to reliably inflict ailments, which is something Archon's tools does if you are using skitterbots. In fact, in practice, what you'll have is almost perfect ailment immunity. And I say almost because there will be about a server tick when you're going to have an ailment, but as soon as the skill sees that you have it on you, it will consume it. You'll go back up to 100% ailment immunity. You'll get 38% fizz as extra. And in practice, what it means is you're going to have this buff up almost all the time. It's not quite perfect because you do have to run in and out of the Skitterbot's aura, or maybe something else can inflict an aura. But in practice, it's like 90-95% of the time. Then you could also use a Storm Shroud if you want. However, I find it a little more awkward acquiring shock avoidance than just straight up ailment immunity. Now, the biggest upside of this is that before, the way I was using it, the only upside was in bossing encounters. Now it is a 0-button situation. It's very good in maps. And in bosses, you just don't have to think about it. Now the downside is it's very difficult to acquire all 3 of them at the same time, because if you have 65% ailment avoidance, what will happen is on average one of the skitterbots will trigger, which means you only get 38%. Now the reason you want this to be as low as possible on yourself and as high as possible on the graft is because you have better odds of getting 2 auras. So occasionally you'll proc it twice. It's not very often, but it does happen, and when that happens you'll get an extra 38% fizzes extra. Highly recommend doing this. You can only do either one or the other of Self-Chill or this, and personally I prefer the Xophgraft because of its excellent uptime in maps. Now you do have to be a little careful. There are buff duration mods on maps that can reduce your buff. This counts as a buff. However, it's easy to add that to your filter, or you can get a Xophgraft with increased skill duration, or CDR. Now, PoE doesn't know what to do with this yet, so in order to account for this in your PoE, you're going to have to add some extra config stuff. You're going to want to put 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments or something similar. I guess you could do Scorch and Chill avoidance as well, because Archon's tools is going to be affecting you. Next, you're going to add some amount of physical damage gained as extra. You can do a split between all 3, or just choose one of the elements. Now, another graph is the Xophgraft, the one with the falling crystals. You can get that to proc covered in frost, and it basically happens all the time. However, it's a bit less damage than the Xophgraft, though is still very strong. And if I weren't running the Xophgraft, I would probably be running this. The other Xophgraft I'm using is a Molten Xophgraft. This one works like Molten Shell. I think most people know about it by now. The one thing I want to point out here is that it triggers when you are missing life. And because we are a skill that spends life, we are constantly triggering Heart of Flame. It's very worth. It's an amazing defensive layer. You get to drop your guard skill, like you don't need to do a Steel Skin automation. The Heart of Flame is definitely worth taking. The next thing I want to touch on really quickly is the Refraction Runegraft. Now I've gotten this question a lot. Is it worth? Yes. The answer is yes, it is worth. It is very worth. I paid 3 divines for mine, and it was worth every penny of that. Let's go see what they cost right now. 12 chaos. This is the best 12 chaos you are ever going to spend in Path of Exile. I guarantee it. It means you get to run 6 damage links and skip chain as a support. The clear is phenomenal. And the question I get the most about the Runegraft specifically is, where do I put it? My recommendation is to choose one of the life wheels. You'd really never drop both of them, and there's only one good life mastery, and that's the 15% increased max life. The other options are the aura wheels maybe. However, often when I push this build a little bit farther, I'll get an RMR cluster and I'll drop one of the wheels. The other one I've seen suggested is maybe the crit wheels. There are 2 of them. However, if you get the Mystical Infusion, Forbidden Flame and Flesh, which I think are very worth, they're probably the best set right now. That means you're probably going to want to drop the spell crit wheel through Doomcast. And then you'd be stuck losing the 25% crit multi that you get from the other mastery. The next thing I want to touch on is bossing. So I've basically been bossing this whole first week. And opening weekend, it was sort of a mixed endeavor. So Uber Shaper, I spent a ton of time in on Sunday. I did 40 of them. and it was pretty much bait. I know that they reworked the drops on a number of uniques, and my suspicion is that they did so with Tides of Time. It was worth a ton, and based on the fragment cost, it still seemed like the right thing to farm on Sunday given the expected value. I went 40 laps and only dropped 2 belts, and several other people in my Discord have also reported similar things, so I suspect when we get better data on it, we're going to find that Tides of Time is much rarer, though I can't confirm that at the moment, so keep that in mind if you are looking to do some Uber Shaper. Feared, however, was very good. I did a ton of Feared, Carry Service, and Uber Feared, and it basically saved my opening weekend bossing. One thing I have to point out though is I did several Uber Incarnation of Dreads, and that fight is buggy as hell. A number of times, maybe 30 or 40% of the time I went in there, the fight completely bugged out. And I don't know if there's some sequencing with the roses that needs to be different or what, but I literally could not finish the fight. I was calling other people in, trying to make some progress on the fight, but he was stuck in a phase and I just could never get the fight finished. And so I would end up ripping the cost of the frags, which was something like a divine. Now the normal version of Incarnation of Dread is actually more profit because it'll drop the Wine of the Prophet, which I've sold a few for between 20 and 23 divines. Yo, I heard a tink. A gold flask. What's this? Yo, we're rich. Oh shit. And he also drops the Lich Hat, which you can sell unID'd for a good amount, or if you're feeling spicy, you can ID them. And the last thing I want to touch on is sort of general build advice. So I've answered a ton of questions on Twitch. We've answered a ton of questions on Discord. I want to point out, and first off, give a shout out to PoE and Ice Penguin, who have done an amazing job on Discord. And there are a ton of other super helpful people in Discord. Lots of people have played the build before, or are very knowledgeable in general about mines and how to scale them. And we have a pretty vibrant conversation going all the time. If you have questions, the Discord is a great place to go and ask them. Or you can come say hi on Twitch. I'm trying to stream a little bit more as I have time. But yeah, seriously, huge thank you to everybody in the Discord. And I also wanted to say thank you to everybody because I just crossed 25,000 subs on YouTube, which is, again, a milestone I never expected. So thank you all for that. Anyway, if you're watching this, I'm probably live on Twitch right now. Come say hi. Now it is time to work on my next build.